So you're new to being a developer and you've come across Go, you started learning it for a little bit. Now you're confident enough to feel like, well, maybe I can get my feet wet and get into some interviews and maybe land my first job as an entry-level developer. Before you do that, there's a few things that you need to know, and let's go over those. So the absolute first thing that I think that you need to know, and I recommend that you do if you haven't already, is create yourself a LinkedIn profile. And basically what LinkedIn is, it's a social media site very similar to Facebook, but it's more addressing the professional business aspect of things. And most businesses and recruiters will look at LinkedIn for a lot of their recruitments. So they have searches that they can utilize on their side and put in keywords such as Go to look for potential Go developers. There is a flag on there where you can set yourself as available for opportunities or available to work. And in the description and the title, whenever you create your profile, I would include the word Go and Golang into that. I know that as an entry-level developer coming on, you're not going to have a lot of work history as a developer, and that's okay. So here's what I suggest you do. Go ahead and put in your work history because that's important to show potential employers that, hey, you do have a solid work history. There's not a lot of gaps. However, a lot of places that you may be learning Go from, platforms such as Udemy or some others, should include a certificate of completion once you completed a course. I would absolutely attach those certificates to that. And maybe when a recruiter reaches out, just explain to them, hey, I'm learning Go, I have a passion for it, and here's some of my certificates to prove that I'm putting into effort. And I would also highly encourage you to take maybe get in contact with your professors or maybe some of your co-classmates and maybe even potential personal contacts that have professional LinkedIn profiles who can endorse you on specific skills. I would list those skills where they can actually get on their profile and endorse you through that profile. It's also good to understand that most people who are looking for entry-level positions to fill, that they understand that you're not going to be on that upper spectrum of maybe, intermediate or senior level. You're not going to have a lot of the skills that those individual levels have, but they're willing to hire you on and mold and shape you into a developer that they need. And so a lot of the times, those positions, they're going to look for personality and a match of personality to fit their team more than they really will zone in on the hard aspects of maybe your knowledge on particular Go aspects. So keep that in mind. Personality goes a long, long, long ways on an interview and your entire work career. And then the next thing you're going to want to do is get familiar with the interview process. And even though you probably haven't been on one yet, you can still do it by going to YouTube and typing in things like remote developer interviews. And there's a lot of content out there. You want to get familiar with the type of questions they're going to ask and the responses to those questions. In particular, the correct responses to those questions. So a good friend of mine, Todd McLeod, if you've never heard of him, I highly recommend that you check him out since you're dealing specifically with Go. And I'll leave some links in the description below to some of his content. He just came out with a segment on the type of questions to ask an interviewee from the interviewer's perspective, and I highly recommend that you check that out. Even though some of those questions are more intermediate to senior level, it's always good to soak in that knowledge. I would check out those questions and learn the answers to those. I think would be highly beneficial to you. And then the next thing would be to open a GitHub account. Now there are some other services out there like GitHub, like GitLab. But I would highly recommend getting on GitHub first, at least, and opening an account there because about 80%, if not more, of all open source repositories are on GitHub. And most developers have at least a GitHub account also. So get on there, get familiar with it, create an account. Even if you haven't used Git yet or don't know what that is, that's okay. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But definitely open up a GitHub account and get familiar with the aspects of it, the layout, how things work, such as that. More bonus, if you do already know Git and maybe you even have some content that you could put out there, definitely open up a public repository, get that content out there and then link it as a reference on your LinkedIn profile for potential candidates to look at. And then the next thing you're going to do is get familiar with the tools that you're going to use day in and day out as a developer. Starting with Git. It's Git. Again, a link is in the description below that can give you more information about what that is. Now, that's basically a local tool that you're going to use to push your code up to like GitHub or GitLab that we talked about just before. And you're going to be able to pull code that's already in the repo. That way you can work on it or look at it and do what you need to locally also. So yeah, definitely get familiar with Git. And then if you have the time, now a lot of these tools I'm about to mention now are things that as an entry-level developer who gets hired on at a place, they're going to teach you this on the job. But it's still good to get a head start on these. And the first thing would be probably Docker. You're going to learn Docker. You don't need to go heavy in depth to it, but at least get familiar with Docker. Kubernetes. Now, Kubernetes is, even as a seasoned developer, there's kind of a long-running joke about how complicated Kubernetes is to learn. But still, definitely look out into it. Particularly the YAML file. It's a format that Kubernetes uses to stand up configurations for itself. And then the kubectl command line utility. That's KUBECTL. And again, I'll put that stuff down in the description below. Definitely get familiar with those if you're going to go as far as to diving into some of these DevOps tools to get a head start. Then once you're past that, or maybe you want to skip those for now and just completely learn those on the job, which is okay. Definitely learn the cloud platforms. So you're looking at Google Cloud Platform and then AWS, which is Amazon. Now both of those allow you to create an account, and I believe that Google still offers the free $100 credit, and I'm not sure if AWS does also, but they both have a free tier. So once you get your account created and start looking at those cloud platforms and playing with the different features, just keep note of their free tiers and what selections that you need to do to keep in that free range, and then you can experiment and play with those. So I highly encourage you to do that. And there's some good material out there also, some courses that you can find on Udemy to touch base on all of the things I just mentioned. And lastly, I would just say this is an ever-evolving process. Don't give up. You're now part of the team. Continue to learn, deep dive into the standard library, learn all the tools you can. Even if you think you're familiar with it, just never stop learning. You'll always find a surprise around the corner. I've used Go for about 10 years now, and there's stuff in the standard library that I dig deep into that you don't use every day, and you're surprised by it all the time. So continue to do that. And also when it comes to the hiring on process, just keep in mind that even as a seasoned senior developer, sometimes it takes a few interviews. You're going to get one where you feel like you knocked it out of the park and you're still not going to get hired, and that's okay. Don't give up. Keep going. It's a process, but while you're waiting for those interviews to come in and you're waiting to land that position, never stop learning and keep going forward. And I just wanted to say congratulations, you've got this far. You're now a member of the club, and I appreciate that you're here. I know it can be a scary experience coming in from maybe another field or profession into a developer role, and I just want to thank you for choosing Go and choosing your decision and moving forward with it. We're here to help you. We're here to talk about Go. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on my LinkedIn. It's in my About tab on this page, or leave a comment below and I'll try to answer all that I can. But again, I appreciate you watching to the end of the video. I plan on having content out at least once a week, covering all kinds of aspects of Go. So I just wanted to say thanks again. Y'all take care. Have a good one.